All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. This is the 2 p.m. section on Monday, February 22nd. I'm very honored that today we have Bloomberg here to basically do two things. One, Jordan is going to introduce her team in just a minute, but they lead the recruiting efforts here at the University of Maryland. And we got some really exciting opportunities you guys need to be aware of and potentially take advantage of. And then she also has a couple of her analysts, and they are going to go through some more advanced training on the terminal and show you some very nifty features on some things that you can do that will help you throughout the class and actually beyond. I've been through the last two sessions they did today, very informative. Learned a few new tricks that I had no idea, and they always refresh it with cool new features. So excited to have them here today. Let's give them our attention, and I'm going to turn over to Jordan to take over from here.
Awesome, thank you. And it looks like I'm not able to share my screen. If you'd be able to grant that, that'd be great. There we go. Perfect, thank you so much. All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to meet all of you. My name is Jordan Allison, and I am a campus recruiter with Bloomberg. I have the pleasure of working very closely with University of Maryland, specifically with the Smith School. And I wish we were all in College Park today, but we're excited to still meet with you virtually. So today I am joined by my colleagues Freya and Maya. They will introduce themselves at the back end of my presentation as they get into their sections on the terminal. But we wanted to, take some time to talk a little bit about Bloomberg as a company. You all have been using our product, the terminal, for a few weeks now. And I'm not sure if you know this, but Maryland actually has the largest terminal lab in the US at a university. I think you're just second. I think there's one school in Asia that has a slightly larger lab than yours. So maybe someday we'll get you up over that and make you the largest lab in the world. But in any case, we have a really fantastic relationship with the school. We have a ton of terps at Bloomberg, always want to get more students and alumni in, so we're always excited to share with you a bit more about who we are and what we do. So Bloomberg was founded in the early 80s, really with the goal to bring transparency to the markets. So if you know anything about the history of stock trading or bond trading or finance in general, it is not a place that was very transparent. It was really hard to get data, kind of depended on who you knew, who you asked, what they told you, what time of day it was. You didn't know how new the data was, where it was coming from. And so our founder and CEO, Mike Bloomberg, sought out to bring data and technology into this space and really aim to democratize data to allow people to use it to make decisions. So now we are known as really, the world's primary distributor of financial data, also known very much in the media industry. You might be familiar with Bloomberg Business Week, Bloomberg News, Bloomberg Podcasts, Bloomberg Quick Take on Twitter, Bloomberg Radio, a lot of different offerings there to do the same thing, deliver data, deliver news to our clients and to people who make decisions off the back of that. So that is what we have been doing since 1981. That's what we're still doing now, and excited that we've continued to grow in that way. So you all know the Bloomberg Terminal already. That is our flagship product. There is really nothing else like it on the market. There are some other good tools out there that do provide financial data, but there is truly nothing like the terminal. As you all have probably realized over your work with the terminal, going through BMC certification, there's a lot of different use cases for this product. There are a ton of different types of people who benefit from it, who can use it. And so, of course, we're known in the finance world, but we also serve people in other industries. So we work with government professionals. I actually got my start working with clients in DC on Capitol Hill who use our data for legislative decisions, and corporations who are trying to sell into the government who use our data to do that. We have products for tax, accounting, legal professionals, doing a lot in the energy and sustainability space as well. So really anyone that can benefit from data, especially in really volatile, fluctuating markets like all of these places, can benefit from a Bloomberg terminal. We've got just over 330,000 clients worldwide. So that ranges from any type of person, any type of player that can use the terminal. There are portfolio managers, risk analysts, even high net worth individuals who use the terminal just on their own dime. But if you work in the finance space, if you're trading, if you're doing any of this type of work, equity analysis, it is much easier to do your job with a terminal than without. In terms of our employee base, we've got about 20,000 employees in just under 200 offices in over 70 countries across the globe. So Bloomberg is a truly global organization. We're always excited about people that come to the company that know a second language, that want that global exposure, that are interested in kind of working for a global company. It's really nice because, of course, we're a global company, but we don't have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people working here. So you still really get to know people no matter what country they're in or what country you're in. And there's a lot of opportunity to collaborate. With all of our entry-level jobs, we hire for the same jobs in multiple countries. So if you join Bloomberg as a data analyst, there are also people becoming data analysts in London and in Singapore, Shanghai, in Australia. So you will have exposure and kind of access to that global level as well, which is very unique and very exciting. At Bloomberg, we like to say that we work on purpose. Bloomberg is an innovative environment. It's dynamic. We work at a smart speed because that is what the market necessitates. That's what our client needs from us. People are making quick decisions off the back of our data, and so we have to work quickly and efficiently with total accuracy. And Bloomberg is a place that is about real work, right? We're not in the business of busy work. We don't have time for busy work. Everything we're doing is really for a greater purpose. So we're always looking for that greater impact. And employees are really encouraged to make an impact, no matter if you are an intern or an executive. There is a lot of space to be creative, to bring your ideas to the table. It's something that we even kind of test you for during the interview process. We want to know how creative you are. We want to get to know your logic, how you think. And so that's something that is really highly encouraged at the company. Building relationships, networking, getting to know people who are not on your team, not even in your department, is something that is extremely valuable. And at Bloomberg, in our offices, which of course we're not in right now, we have very open floor plans. So nobody at Bloomberg has a physical office. So it's not a place where there's a lot of hierarchy and it's about, well, this person has the corner office, this person's a senior manager, and that person's a junior associate. Everyone sits at a desk the exact same size. Mike Bloomberg's desk is the same size as my desk. At the office, I sit next to my manager. He sits next to his manager. His manager is 2 steps away from Mike Bloomberg and is the global head of my department and someone that I'm really encouraged to network with and to share what I'm doing and for her to know, my progress and my challenges. And that's really, really unique in a large company. And again, we're not huge on the hierarchy. So this is not a company where you start off as a junior associate and then in a year you become this level, in a year you become this level, because that's just the way things go. It's a place where you move through your career based on what you want to learn, how you want to learn it, what you're good at, what you're interested in, and how you can contribute. So there's a lot of flexibility for you to come to Bloomberg, explore a lot of options, and really kind of chart your path. So we always like to talk about that as well, as it's quite unique. So when it comes to that, our people are our priority, as we like to say. With career development, again, that really is about what you want to learn, how you want to do it, and less about, you're at this stage, so you have to do this. It's about what you contribute. Something that is really important to us from the get-go in the recruiting process is diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging. So in the recruiting process, we're looking for people with different backgrounds, different experiences. We don't hire just one major from one school. Of course, like I said, we have a ton of Maryland alum, a lot of Smith alum at the company, which we love to see, but it's not about, you having the specific internship or that internship. It's about your skills, how you've used them, how you want to grow. And so that's really what we're looking for, is that creativity. Once you're at the company, there are a lot of different resources for people that want to get involved and continue to grow their networks and really foster that sense of belonging. So we have our communities, which are our employee resource groups, all around different identities and experiences. So we have our Bloomberg Pan-Asian community, Black professionals community, Latinx community, military and vets community, Be Proud, our LGBTQ community, our women's community, working families community, Be Able, our abilities community. Really something for everybody, whether you are someone that has that experience or identity, you want to become a better ally, or you just want to grow your network. They do tons of different community service events, professional development, And it's a really fantastic way, I know for me personally, just to meet other people, get involved with the firm, and kind of expand my horizons to people I maybe wouldn't have met. Bloomberg is also really big on mentorship and providing mentorship to everyone, no matter what level you're at. So making sure that you have people who can help you kind of navigate your career at Bloomberg, who advocate for you. And that's a huge part of our diversity and inclusion work as well. Bloomberg is also really big on well-being, so that personal development in and outside of the office. Bloomberg has really incredible benefits. We pay for all employee healthcare. We have medical offices in our offices that are staffed with medical professionals every day. They do flu shots, blood drives. Those on-site health centers are really, really helpful for employees. And so, of course, we're not doing that right now, but it's something that the company has a huge focus on. We also offer a lot as it pertains to professional development. So we do a lot of work with our internal platforms. So we have a platform called Bloomberg University, which is essentially this giant system full of classes, anything from the financial markets to coding courses, to presentation skills, to leadership training. There's a ton available there that's all free for employees. And we also offer a really generous tuition reimbursement for anyone who wanted to, do a coding boot camp or sit for the CFA, or get a master's degree or go for an MBA or take some classes. Bloomberg's really supportive of people being able to do that sort of professional development in and outside of the office. So that's something that is definitely important to us across the board at Bloomberg, that employees take a lot of advantage of. Something I always like to talk about is Bloomberg Philanthropies. So Bloomberg Philanthropies is our in-house foundation, and they are doing some incredible work across the board with a lot of different areas. So they do a lot of work with education, government, arts and culture. This past year, they've been heavily engaged as it relates to COVID-19, working specifically with Johns Hopkins and the states of New York and New Jersey to develop these amazing contact tracing apps, putting a lot of money into research on COVID, understanding how to combat the virus in cities nationwide. So there's been a lot of amazing work done there. You can learn more about their work at bloomberg.org if you're interested. They do some incredibly impactful work. And it's something that everyone at the company is involved in. So by virtue of working at Bloomberg, you're giving back. And that's because 85% of our profits every year go back into community service work. It's in our business model. So community service is a part of how Bloomberg operates as a company. And we're all still getting paid. The lights are on. So I know it's a lot of money, but it's something that is so important to the company that they make it work, 85%. And so just by working at Bloomberg, you're a part of that. But we also have a lot of other programs for employees to be engaged. So something we really enjoy a lot is what we call BOB, which stands for Best of Bloomberg, and that's our internal community service program. And they put on all different types of community service events, different ways to get involved. Even in the virtual space, they've been giving us opportunities to give back. And so there's lots of events that they do. And they also provide a lot of different programs to help you give back in ways you are already going to do. So we have a program called Dollars for Your Hours, where if you do 25 hours of service in a year, which is just 1 to 2 events per month, which are pretty frequent, then Bloomberg will donate $2,500 in your name to an organization of your choice. If you do 50 hours, Bloomberg will donate $5,000. If you refer a friend for a job and they get the job, Bloomberg will donate $2,500 in your name to an organization of your choice. They also match donations for people that are giving on their own time. So they really make it as easy as possible to help your communities near and far and to be engaged with that. So now let's talk about jobs. So up here, I have some of our departments that we hire for at the entry level as well as for internships. I won't read these word for word, but I'll give you a little sense of what each sort of department entails and what that looks like. So the first department that I always like to touch on is our financial product analytics and sales department. This is a great department for anyone who's interested in doing kind of that front-facing user work on the terminal. So working with clients, training them, understanding how people use the terminal, sales, account management, marketing. This is a really fantastic place to start. You go through a really robust training, really get to understand the terminal in and out, which all of you already have an advantage on just by taking this class. And then you start to go on into, managing customer relationships, working on business analytics, understanding how we communicate with our clients. So really fantastic place to start. Our Bloomberg Customer Support Department, if you're someone who loves to solve problems, you're good with technical issues, this is a really fantastic place to start as well. We have a 24/7 helpline for our clients, as well as digital help on the terminal. And when you call Bloomberg, you will always get a real person first thing. So we have people working around the world, around the clock to provide really fantastic customer support. So a great way to get to know the product, get to know our clients, and be able to problem solve. Our global data department is where we manage all of the data that lives on the Bloomberg terminal. So you have all been working with our data. There is a ton of it, a million different ways to access it. So we have a ton of people working internally at Bloomberg to manage that data, get it to look like the way that it does, to visualize it, to process it. So in this department, we're really looking for people who are interested in the markets and have a level of coding or programming ability. So things like SQL, Python, R, Tableau are really good to see on your resume. Last but not least, our news department. So if you have financial journalism experience, business writing experience, we're always looking for people to join us as reporters and producers in our news and media departments as well. So who do we look for? At Bloomberg, we are looking for people who are creative, who are excited about making an impact, who are effective communicators, who are able to be really organized, who are interested in finance. You don't have to be an expert in the markets, but knowing that you are interested in the data that we work with, the people that we work with is definitely helpful. We like to see people who are really excited about problem solving, who like to see a process and say, actually, there's a much better way we can do that. There's a faster way we can do that. That is really exciting to us. Technology-wise, we want to see a proficiency in Microsoft Excel for most of our roles. Other than that, for our data roles, we do want to see, like I said, that level of coding experience, kind of a beginner to intermediate level. So any leadership experience you've had, extracurriculars, always keep those on your resume. We want to get to know how you work on projects, how you think critically. All of that kind of holistically makes for a really fantastic candidate for Bloomberg. And what are we hiring for? So most of our hiring does happen in the fall, kind of during that big career fair season, but we are still hiring for many of our roles. So all of our open positions are open on HireSmith. They will take you back to our website once you visit there. So we do have some full-time positions available, a couple of internship roles, and then our spring externship for sophomores is opening right about now as well. So again, those are all on HireSmith. My contact info is there too, so I'm always happy to answer questions. But that's just a little bit more about who we are as a company, our values, and what we're hiring for. So we do hope to see you apply. So I want to make sure we've got enough time and as much time as possible, really, for Freya and Maya to share an advanced terminal training. So I will pass it over to them to start off just by introducing themselves, and then they will go through their demonstrations. And then at the end of their presentations today, we'll have some time for any questions you have, whether it's about the terminal, the recruiting process, or anything else. So Freya and Maya, if you would like to introduce yourselves, we will get started.
Perfect. Thanks, Jordan. Hey, everyone. My name is Freya. I actually graduated University of Maryland in spring of 2018. So I can't believe it's been almost 3 years. Time goes by really fast. I've been at Bloomberg pretty much like the entire time since I graduated. I started at Bloomberg summer of 2018, working as a global data analyst. But I'm actually now working in our financial product and sales department, like Jordan mentioned earlier. And I'm an account manager, and so I cover, I'm on a regional buy-side team, so I cover a lot of RIAs, endowment funds, pension funds, insurance companies in the Southeast. So I cover Florida, Tennessee, and South Carolina. So those are the clients that I work with. And really what my job is to kind of make sure that my clients are getting the most out of the terminal. I showcase a lot of new tools and products to them as well. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm going to pass it off to Maya.
Hey guys, my name is Maya. I did not go to University of Maryland, but I went close by to the George Washington University in DC. I also graduated in 2018 and I worked for a year post-grad in DC at a consulting firm before moving to Bloomberg about a little over a year and a half ago now. I am an equity research data analyst, so I'm on the data side and I work closely with our Bloomberg Intelligence team, which is kind of our equity research arm. And I cover equities within the transportation portfolio. So airlines, trucking companies, railroads, third-party logistics like UPS and FedEx. So I work on building company models, writing research, and our fundamentals and Kofi products, which I'll show you later today.
Cool. So I guess this kind of structure that Maya and I are going to follow when doing this terminal demo is that first, I'm just going to show you all a couple of tools that you can use to track your portfolios. I know that you all are working on a couple of different assignments and projects and whatnot. But there's a lot of cool tools you can use, to keep track of names in your portfolio and your portfolio performance. So we're going to go through that. And then I'm going to pass it off to Maya, and she's going to do, kind of dig into a lot of the equity tools, looking at fundamentals and equity screening and whatnot. And then I'll finish it off by talking about some really cool Bloomberg news tools you can all take advantage of, and also talk a little bit about, market data and looking at like a price chart and the cool things you can do with charts on Bloomberg as well. So if any of you guys have questions, feel free to unmute yourself, or you can also type a question in the chat. We'll try and end a few minutes early so that, we'll leave time at the end for questions as well. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, so hopefully you all can see my terminal panel. And the first thing that I wanted to go through was a function called W for Worksheets. I know that you all have portfolios set up on Bloomberg, but what's really cool is that there's a lot of different ways that you can sort of keep track of a group of securities, and Worksheets is one of the functions you can use. So the function code is W, so it's literally just the letter W for watermelon, and then hit enter. And you'll see that by default, this function is going to show me the full library of all the security worksheets that I have. I have like 272, which is a crazy amount, so you can ignore that. But this function will always show you your library of worksheets, which is good. Now, if you wanted to create a new worksheet, at the top left, there's a gray button there. Hit that plus sign and then hit create. And it's going to pull up this kind of table. It looks kind of like Excel. You have different cells and rows and columns and whatnot. And basically what you can do is you can, add in specific tickers. You can double click into a cell and you can add in like Disney, for example. So you can add in single securities. Maybe right click and delete. Or you can add in security lists like an index or a fund. In our case, though, because you guys all have portfolios that you're working with, what you can do is you can actually import your Bloomberg portfolio onto this function. So what I would do is I would go over to the edit button on this function, and then I would click import, and then I would go ahead and select portfolio, and then I'm just going to go ahead and add in one of the portfolios that I want to source, hit import, right, and you're going to see that my portfolio shows up with all of the names in my portfolio here. By default, you'll always get the last price of the tickers in your portfolio. You'll get the one-day net change and one-day percentage change in price as well. Any other columns that you want to add, feel free to do so by double-clicking on the column on a blank column header. That's what I just did. So let me do it again. Double-click on the blank column header, and I can type in anything from PE ratio, for example, to volume to see the total share volume for these different securities. And again, you can keep adding more fields of your choice. Something else that I want to point out is that there is an analytics tab up here at the top. If I click on that, I can actually do a couple of other cool things. I can click on news and event icons. And this allows me to add an icon every time there's a major research article that has come out. If there's been an analyst upgrade or downgrade, right? I can add a flag in for that. Earnings events coming up, I can add a flag for that to show up as well. So a lot of really cool things you can do with this worksheet. So I definitely recommend, utilizing it or checking it out. So that's the Bloomberg worksheet function. Now let's talk about other tools you can use, to just keep track of your portfolio. We'll go a little bit into the research space. We have a function called RES, which is RES for our research portal. And RES is going to show you broker research as well as Bloomberg Intelligence research. So Maya, she's on a Bloomberg Intelligence team. And basically, as some of you may know, with your Bloomberg Terminal account, you get access to some free broker research as well as some Bloomberg curated research from Bloomberg Intelligence. Obviously free of charge, it comes to your terminal account. Now, what's really cool about this RES function is that it's going to show you basically any sort of research article, whether it's broker research or Bloomberg research that has come out within the past 24 hours. Everything you see here is going to follow your settings. So up top, under the My Company section, this will show you broker research and Bloomberg Intelligence research that has recently come out for names in my portfolio. Everything else like equity strategy, credit strategy, ESG, these are topics that I personally picked because I'm interested in these three strategies here. And it's basically showing me some more broad macro level research that falls under these topics. Now, like I said, everything falls under settings on this function. So if I click on settings at the top in the red toolbar, I can go ahead and actually source the portfolio that I want to use, right? So on the right-hand side, next to list, there's a yellow search bar. You can go ahead and enter any portfolio or Bloomberg worksheet, just like the W function of your choice. And then the left-hand side is where you can pick, the different topics that you're interested in looking at research for. Always have My Companies checked because that'll show you research for the list you have sourced. Anything else is totally free game. Whatever you're interested in, you can go ahead and check. Once you've done that, you can hit save. And then just going back to the research function, right, it'll follow your settings. And again, it'll show you all the relevant broker and Bloomberg research you have access to. So that's what our research function looks like. Next, we want to talk a little bit about news. We have a lot of really cool news tools that you can use, especially for looking at news specific to your portfolio. We have a function called N. It is literally just the letter N like Nancy. Hit enter. And then when you run this function at the top in blue, there's a kind of a section that says pick a ticker list. Click on that, and you'll be able to go ahead and source a portfolio of your choice. So we'll pick a portfolio. And once you've clicked on that portfolio, it's going to take you to a newsfeed page, and it's going to show you relevant news headlines for names in your portfolio. At the top, you'll find top ranked news, so top headlines that have come out for your portfolio. And then on the bottom part of the screen, you'll find any sort of breaking news that has come out in a time-ordered fashion for names in your portfolio. So this is a great way to keep track of news headlines and whatnot for names in your portfolio. On the other side, we've also got really cool news analytics tools, and it uses a lot of Bloomberg's kind of automated intelligence sort of features that we have. So there's this function that we have called Trend, T-R-E-N, for news trends. T-R-E-N, hit enter, and this is really cool because it's gonna show you, which I'll go over in a second, but it's basically gonna show you any sort of news sentiment and social media sentiment for different names in your portfolio. So once I load this function, what I would do is I would click on security list in black, and then towards the right-hand side, next to where it says list, in that yellow bar, this is where I would go ahead and type in the name of my portfolio. So I have this portfolio automatically loaded. Switch this. Let's see. I'll go select my portfolio, and you're going to notice that there's all these tabs that kind of run across the screen. For example, we have news reader activity tab. This is going to show me for what names in my portfolio have had a lot of news readership activity. So what does that mean? It means that a lot of people are reading articles for a specific company today for some reason. And let me see if I can pull it up. Let's do this one. For example, right, we have this company Viatris right here. And it has gotten a lot of news readership within the past 8 hours today, and we can see that to the right-hand side, it shows us that they reported earnings, and that's why they're getting a lot of readership on them, right? So you can actually click into the according news article to kind of see why there's been a lot of news readership activity for these different names in my security list. If I click on the news sentiment tab, this is going to show me for what names in my portfolio have had a lot of negative news headlines, right? So we have Entergy Corp has had a lot of negative news because, what's going on in Texas. And also with most positive here, right? So Dish Network has had a lot of positive news headlines because they beat earnings, right? So you'll be able to kind of keep track of the negative, positive news sentiment through here. Twitter sentiment is really, really cool. I think all of us can recognize the power of social media, especially how it affects the markets. We've seen what has happened with Reddit as a platform and how it has affected, stock performance, a few weeks ago. And the same thing happens, Kylie Jenner has made a tweet about Snapchat a few years ago. And the price of Snapchat went down like 10% immediately after, right? So Bloomberg has really tried to tap into the social media space, and we've incorporated Twitter. And what's really cool is that this Twitter sentiment tab is going to show you, for names in your security list or portfolio within the past 8 hours, which names have had a lot of negative tweets about them and which ones have had a lot of positive tweets about them, right? Bloomberg, we don't, we only source from reliable accounts, so we're not sourcing from like meme accounts on Twitter and things like that. It's all coming from reliable sources, and you'll be able to see the representative tweet related to every single security in your list here, right? So negative tweets versus the most positive tweets you'll be able to see here. And other tabs we have is like news volume and Twitter volume and social velocity if you want to keep track of the volume of news and tweets and whatnot that are coming out with names or security lists. But TRAN, again, is a really, really cool kind of analytical tool to keep in touch with the news and social media space for your portfolio. Great, so that's news. I kind of want to finish it off talking about like earnings. So there's a function called EVT. EVT stands for company events, right? So every time a company is about to report earnings or they're about to have a conference call or a company presentation, any sort of major corporate event like that, we keep a calendar of those events on this function called EVT. So let me go ahead and I'm just going to exit out of anything that shows up prior to here. But EVT is really great because you can actually source a portfolio on here. So towards the left-hand side on my screen, where my mouse is, you're going to see there's a gray source button. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And this is where I can go ahead and source any portfolio of my choice. So we can go ahead, pick one. So I'm going to pick this portfolio, right? And this is going to show me for names in my portfolio what corporate events are going to be happening, right? And it's really great because you'll kind of get to see all of it in time-ordered fashion here. Some of them are earnings releases, some of them are shareholder meetings, etc. You can tell based upon the icon that shows up. The left-hand side, all where my mouse is, it's going to show you a little filtering table, so you'll be able to filter down through here as well. What's really cool is that if you were to click into any of these events, you can actually go ahead and create an alert. So if you're interested in following a company's earnings and you want to be alerted when their earnings are released, you can create an alert through Bloomberg and you'll get notified. So that's pretty cool. So that's the EVT page. Now let's talk a little bit about company filings and transcripts, right? Like let's say that you want to take a look at the earnings transcript that has come out following company reporting earnings, right? We have a function called CF. It's our company filings tool. And this is where you're going to find, let me just load. So Apple, and then we're going to load CF. This CF function is cool because you're going to find any sort of related company filing or document. to the company you have loaded, right? So we have earnings calls, we have 10Ks and 8Ks, right? That's where the statement of cash flows and balance sheet and all that information is in there. And so CF is just going to house, any sort of company filing that we have. Now this is going to take me to a new function that has just come out, within the past month or two, and that's called a Transcript Analyzer. It's TA. TA is really, really cool because it uses, again, kind of the automation feature of the Bloomberg Terminal, and basically it's going to show you, first of all, in a time-ordered fashion, basic excerpts of an earnings call, right? So you can read the full transcripts and excerpts from different earnings calls and company presentations and events like that. But what I really like about this function is the fact that you can actually search for keywords, keywords to screen for in company filings, right? So for Apple, if I type in China, for example, and hit enter, it's actually going to go ahead and screen through and show me all the sections for any earnings calls or company presentations that Apple has had with the word China. Right, so you can actually go ahead and kind of keep track of this through here. Now, the analytics tab on this screen is super, super cool because it shows you in a graphical format the number of times the word the word China has been used in any sort of Apple earnings conference or presentation and whatnot, right? So we can kind of see through over time, how keywords are being utilized. I also want to mention that if I just clear out this yellow search bar here at the top, you'll also be able to type in the name of your portfolio that you want to source. So if I just typed in, see one of my portfolios over here, I'll be able to actually source a portfolio of mine, and it'll go ahead and screen through company filings for all the names in my portfolio, which is really cool as well. So it's taking a little bit of time to load, but you'll be able to find all of that through here. There we go. So we can actually see for my portfolio, over time, the number of times the word COVID-19 has been mentioned in a quarterly earnings release, right? Like, look at that. COVID-19, obviously nothing mentioned 2019, a little bit in Q1 2020. Was mentioned 13 times. Look at this, Q2 2020 is mentioned 75 times, right? We obviously know that halfway through 2020 was when, things really hit the fan. So it's just really cool to kind of take a look at this. So that's kind of what I had in the sort of generic, tools you can use to analyze your portfolio. I'm going to go ahead and pass this off to Maya. She's going to dig into a lot of really cool equity tools and some company-specific tools as well. So Maya, if you want to take it away, I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen.
Awesome, thank you. Let me share my screen. Okay, you should all be able to see my screen now. Let me know if you don't. Okay, so to start off, let me minimize some stuff. So kind of touching on some of the stuff that Freya started with, just to show like a daily use for it and how cool of a tool it really is. The worksheet. So you can obviously create your own worksheet for your portfolio. I currently have my Launchpad set up. So it opens up to all the companies that are in my portfolio that I cover. So that way I can see kind of either divided by industry or like which Bloomberg Intelligence like analyst it's under. And I can track their reporting dates and reporting times. Especially it's important during earnings season when companies can be reporting as early as like 5 o'clock in the morning pre-market or after market late in the afternoon. So I have that set to open whenever I open up the terminal. I also have like a news event column here that shows if there's any like recent news about a company. So like, for example, I cover, it's hidden, but Boeing. And so Boeing reported or had some problems recently again. And so we'd see, my screen resolution is not set correctly, but you'd see a lot of news stories for Boeing right now. So today I kind of want to talk about tools for equity analysis and research. I want to start kind of broad, learning about like specific industries, how to analyze a company's performance in relation to its peers, and how to identify who its peers are based on different criteria. So to start out, I just have Apple set, but first we will go to our equity screening tool. So you can type in EQS is the name of the function. And it brings us to equity screening. And there's honestly so many ways to customize this and use this as a tool. I'll revisit it again at the end of the presentation, but right now I want to start just by kind of narrowing down on a specific industry. So looking right now, it comes pre-selected with all actively traded companies, the primary security for the company only, meaning like Apple lists on multiple exchanges, but it's using the primary security. We can continue to layer on criteria to bring this number down to as small as we want it. So to start, we'll start with country of domicile. So I could do North America. I'm going to select United States. Click update. And so that already brings the number down a ton because it's only looking at actively traded companies that are domiciled in the United States. Next, I am interested in looking at industries and sectors. So Apple is obviously a technology company. So I can come up and click sectors here. And we have this conveniently built out for all of you to kind of expand and search and drill down further and further into like subsets of industries. We break these down. It defaults to BICS, which stands for the Bloomberg Industry Classification Standard. This is our golden standard here. And this will be the default that you see on a lot of different functions that use like peer analysis. We also, you can switch it if you'd like and use GICS, Global Industry Classification Standard. We have NAICS codes for North America Industry Classification, and a ton of other options to choose from, but we'd suggest to start with BICS codes. And there's multiple levels of BICS. So like technology is going to be level 1, and then we break it down into like level 2, 3, and so on. I'm just going to start broad because we can always add more on to filter further down, and select technology. So we're going to add that. So now I'm looking at actively traded companies in the United States that are in the technology sector. Next, I want to filter based on some financials now. So I want to look at companies that probably had like early exposure to the impact of COVID. So companies like US companies that have a large percentage of revenue coming from the Asia Pacific region. So one of the great things about EQS is you don't necessarily need to know what you're looking for right away. You can just start typing here and tons of options come up, and you can like click fields to see more options. I don't want to use that one. Just do revenue. And so I'm going to look at geographic segment revenue percent. And I want to look from the Asia Pacific region. So I want to look at greater than 30%. Oops, that did not show up as a percentage. Let's see. Greater than. Okay, and now we are going to look at our results. So we can see it's sorted high to low right now. But we can see these are US companies that had, some of them have all of their revenue coming from the APAC region, even though they are domiciled in the United States. We can also use custom fields and formulas. I highly suggest everyone use FLDS and get familiar with that, because you can search for really any field. We have a lot of pre-built ratios and formulas already created for you. But if for some reason you need to create your own custom formula, you can come up here to formulas. And that FLDS fields search function is also like pre-built in here, so you don't necessarily have to go to another screen. But you can just start typing in formulas down here. So they have examples for how to structure the formulas down below. But let's say we already have a field for pre-tax income margin, but let's say we didn't have one, and so we want to create one. So I'm going to do RR001, which is pre-tax income, divided by ISO 10, which is revenue, times 100. Now I'm going to click Save and Use. Oops. And now I could filter based on it, but I'm just going to display it. So it didn't change the number of matches for the search. And we can see our custom field here, as well as, and we can sort on anything else. So EQS is super customizable. You can export this, you can create a portfolio or worksheet based on this, but it's a really great way to kind of learn about the peers within a specific industry and start your research off that way. Some other ones that I like to look at is Drive, which is super high level. It's usually a starting place for me when I first pick a security to look at. And it just gives you some profitability metrics, leverage ratios, surprise, which we'll touch on a little bit later, and just some key exposure areas. And it's in relation, this changes based on the security you have set, but it's comparing it to the top 3,000. One that I really like is RV for relative valuation. So I come here and it is showing me, since I have Apple set, it's using a peer group based on what's been curated by Bloomberg Intelligence within the global mobile handset manufacturers peers. So it is comparing Apple to Samsung and HTC. And this overview, as it is an overview, very high level, and it compares Apple to its peers here. You can switch out the peers or use your own custom one that you maybe just created in EQS as well. You can explore the rest of the tabs here. We have profitability metrics, ESG metrics, environmental social governance. And so it's a good way to see not only who peers are, but how the specific company stacks up in comparison to their peers. From here, I usually will now start to dive into actual company performance once I've identified the security I want to analyze. So there's two sides to this. There is how a company has performed historically and how we think a company is going to perform in the future. So I'll start with the first one. So to analyze how a company has performed historically and over time, you can type in FA. So this is financial analysis. And so this is company reported data. So we're just coming off the tail end of Q4 earnings season. I say Q4, but really there's companies, especially retail companies, that have different fiscal year ends. So Apple, for example, they just reported 2021 Q1. So it's really just earnings season right now. All of this data for US publicly traded companies, for the most part, is either coming from company presentations, company press releases, and most importantly, the SEC EDGAR feed. So US publicly traded companies have to file 10Ks and 10Qs with the SEC. And we get that automatically through what's called the EDGAR feed. So one of the cool things about FA, and kind of ties into what Jordan was talking about earlier about the sense of transparency and how Bloomberg was built on democratizing the market. Not only do we have transparency in our offices and the actual layout, but in our data as well. So you can click through a data point or a formula and ratio, and you can see the actual point on the 10Q, 10K press release, etc., where that data is coming from. So this is a really great way to check the data or see a little bit more detail if it's coming from the notes to the financial statements. So that's always a cool feature to look at. I won't dive into too much detail on this, but we do have both flavors of adjusted and US GAAP, IFRS if it's not a GAAP reporting company. And so you can look at the Bloomberg adjusted numbers. So we adjust for things like stock-based compensation. You can look at company as reported, so straight from the filings, no formulas or anything, and then GAAP. And then we also, if you're really curious about the accounting behind it all, we have a reconciliation that'll take you from GAAP values to adjusted values. We also have segments data, which I like to look at segments data probably the most in FA, just because it gives me a really great picture of how a company operates and how it's broken up geographically, their key products and services, and how much of revenue or expenses or really tons of other metrics are coming from a specific product. You'll notice here there are some blanks, and that's because oftentimes companies will change how they report their segments or their restructure their segments. So for instance, Apple no longer reports revenue for iTunes software and services and iPod broken out. They report product revenue and service revenue, and then product is broken down further. So that's just a great way to understand more of the company specific information. We also, on the additional tab, have industry specific data. So like software data that, let's say, an airline may not disclose. And then lastly, we have custom displays here. So you can, here's that little fields pop up again that you saw in EQS. You can start typing and things will populate, or you can search throughout here. There's a lot more to FA, but those are just a couple of things I want to highlight right now. And feel free to interrupt me if anyone has any questions. I'm going to hop over to the opposite side now for the estimated future performance. So Freya touched on it a little bit earlier with research reports. So we have brokers that contribute their models and estimates for companies that and model out how a company is going to perform. By taking all of those estimates, we create something called consensus, which is essentially just an average for how the street thinks a company is going to perform in a certain metric for next quarter, next year, the next couple of years. So this earn function is a great place to start. It is looking at, it just goes one metric by time. So we're just looking at EPS right now. And we are looking at, so these periods in white here, these are future periods that haven't occurred yet. And so you don't see this amber reported comp, we only see this estimate here. And that is because there is no reported data yet. So this is how the street thinks Apple will perform in EPS over the next 4 quarters. if we look at our most recently reported period, which was Q1 2021, we can see the reported earnings per share was 1.68. We see that here. The difference between reported and comp, usually there won't necessarily be one. Comp is just making sure that it's on the same basis. So like we're looking at GAAP EPS right now versus adjusted. We can see how the street thought they were going to perform prior to reporting Q1 earnings. And from those two values, we get a surprise. So you may have heard terminology like a company beats earnings or beats expectations or misses. For 2021 Q1, Apple beat expectations for EPS. If we can switch it to revenue, for instance, and now we see something called guidance here. Guidance, so we have how a company actually performed with reported and comp. We have how the street thought a company would perform for estimates. And now we have guidance, which is how the company thought they would perform for a future period. Historically, like in the past couple of years, we've only had like under 20 companies retract guidance after issuing it. But in the past couple of months, we have seen like over 1,000 companies retract guidance, and that's purely because of the instability in the market due to the pandemic. So that's been super interesting to see. So like Apple hasn't given guidance in the past couple of quarters, and they did historically consistently. So we'll see when they start issuing guidance again. Moving on to, let's take a look at EEO is another function also looking at consensus. And this just kind of gives a different snapshot of, multiple metrics, the actual reported value versus the estimated values for future periods. So traditionally, an analyst would have to look at EEO, ERN, MODL, and then look at FA separately to kind of be able to get a picture of how companies performed historically versus how they are set to perform in the future. But a really cool product that we've spent a lot of time and put a lot of hard work into is Ko-fi. So I'm not sure if you guys run it and for some reason you don't have access, we can get you access. It may just ask you to opt in because it's a newer product. But when you first look at it, it looks similar to what the MODL screen looked like, where you have like consensus here, but for like a lot more metrics than we saw on EEO and EARN. I go to Q1, which was already reported. I now can see the actual reported data, consensus, and that surprise. So before we saw surprise, this 18.6%, but we saw it only for like a few key metrics. Now we see it for all the line items, such as service revenue. We can see the surprise was 5%, or that revenue from the Americas region missed expectations actually. So it's a lot more detail. So essentially what we've done, if we come over to multiple periods, is we have taken all this data in yellow from Q2 2018 to 2021 Q1 is reported actual data that we saw from FA. And all of this data to the right, and I can move over a bit, is consensus. So we can actually see in a time series how a company has performed over time and how the street expects it to perform in the future. So this is a really cool feature that honestly has made my life a lot easier for analyzing a company, and gives a lot more detail into company performance. So I'd encourage you all to check that out. kind of touching on equity research, I wanted to touch base a little bit on Bloomberg Intelligence, which I know was mentioned a little bit earlier. But Bloomberg Intelligence covers, I want to say 5,000 companies worldwide. The big guys definitely, like, they cover all of the S&P 500. And so if you type in BICO on a ticker that is Bloomberg Intelligence covered, it will bring you to the company outlook research page. So you can see the senior analyst that covers Apple, and you can kind of see like a company outlook. So very timely research that has gone into future performance. You can see financial review. So this comes out like right when a company reports earnings, looking at their results. You can also, on the right-hand side under supporting data, we have company earnings analyzers. So if you're looking at FA and there's like so much data between the income statement, balance sheet, cash flow segments, etc., a nice place to, if you're not very familiar with the company, to learn like what is most important to equity analysts or brokers is coming to the company earnings analyzer. These are specifically built by BI, like what's based on their models, what they're looking to write about. So like you can see iOS smartphone shipments, you can see personal computers, the market value of the MacBook, or the market share of the MacBook, as well as definitely the income statement and the balance sheet. But this is a good place to kind of get familiar with everything. Aside from like specific company earnings analyzers and dashboards, we have like market topic Bloomberg Intelligence boards. So if you go to BI Market Vault, this one I think is really cool because a couple of months ago, we spent a lot of time working on getting this data, and it's become so timely recently. So I mentioned a little bit earlier that publicly traded US companies have to file their financials through the SEC Edgar feed. Private companies don't. So sometimes we have a pretty good private company coverage for financial data. And sometimes they disclose it publicly on their website, or it's a non-traditional data set. So retail brokers, whether they're public or private, they have to file what's called a 606 brokerage report. So this is a monthly report that breaks down all of the like trade execution orders, like total payments to different platforms, etc. So one of the cool things is that Robinhood, even though it's a private company, we have on a monthly basis all of their like execution order data. So like if we're looking at total shares / contracts executed, we can see that Robinhood over the pandemic has really grown the number of like execution orders, which is cool because it completely backs up that more and more individual retail investors have gotten involved in the market over the past couple of months. So I want to kind of circle back to EQS for a moment. I know GameStop has been a very hot topic recently. And so traditionally I use EQS specifically for like peer analysis and more on the like fundamental side, but there's a million other things you can do with it, including potentially find the next GameStop. So you can come in and let's just change this to North America. And like I said, when you start typing here, there's so many things that pop up. So the possibilities are honestly endless. And I would encourage everyone to kind of just explore it a little bit. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to do 30%. And I'll explain what this is in a minute. Every time. Come on. There we go. Okay, so now we are going to see our results. So what we're looking at is the current percentage of free float that has been shorted. So we can see like GameStop up here. We can see National Beverage Corporation, AMC. So any of these companies could potentially be the next GameStop. So that's just a cool alternative way to use EQS. Lastly, before I hand it over to Freya, as she's about to go into like more graphing data, I wanted to touch on another really cool and timely function. So it doesn't have as clever as a function name as most of the other ones do. But if you type G space pound maps space 292, this will pull up this heat map for the state of Texas. As I'm sure most of you are aware, Texas has been in the news recently for record-breaking freezing temperatures and the crisis with energy. So you can, like down here, we can see like all of these companies are in Texas. And so we can see like coal, nuclear, natural gas, oil, solar, all of these different energy companies. And then we can also see where they are in Texas and also the average temperatures in the different counties and cities. So you can see like that they're in operational status or if they're pending or planned. So just a really cool way to use maps. And we have additionally like a COVID-19 map that looks at cases, deaths, and then vaccinations as well, which I think is really cool to see that increasing obviously now. So really cool things that you can do with our mapping feature, and you can go through all of these other data sets on the side here, and it's highly customizable. So with that, unless anyone has any questions, I'll hand it over.
Awesome, cool. Thanks, Maya. Okay, so Maya kind of left us off at a good place because I think there's a lot of really cool Bloomberg News tools and also charting tools that I'll show you hopefully in the next like 5 minutes. I can get it done so we have time for questions. So let me go ahead and share my screen again. All right, all right, so hopefully you guys can see my screen again. Shows you this really cool Texas, this Texas power map grid thing that we have. There's a lot of really cool stuff you can do, like the maps functions on Bloomberg. But this is one example of how Bloomberg tries to, keep itself relevant with current events. Something that we've been showcasing last semester is this function called VRUS, virus, for the coronavirus market impact. So VRUS, hit enter. This is a really great news tool to kind of keep track of what's going on in COVID-19 and its global impact and its impact on the markets as well. You'll see here at the top left, you'll find affected companies, affected U.S. companies based upon, COVID-19, right? So their earnings are affected, any news headlines that have affected them, right? They'll show up on this little table up here. On the bottom, you're going to find any sort of breaking news on coronavirus, and it show up in a time-ordered fashion. A lot of times, most of the news we're seeing now is more so on vaccines, so you'll find it here. The right-hand side is going to show you another map that keeps track of the coronavirus outbreak. So it's really cool. This map right here actually shows kind of how each country's vaccination rate is going right now, so you'll be able to kind of keep track of that there. And we also have different charts here to keep track of COVID cases and whatnot. So if you can kind of click into each of these little tables, right, and it'll take you to the actual function that has more details, right? So you can kind of get a breakdown on different regions and countries and what their case count looks like, what their vaccination rate and things like that look like as well. So that's one of our kind of cool functions that we've recently built out specifically for the pandemic is a VRUS function. Other generic Bloomberg News functions that I personally like to keep up with current events, it's going to be this function called the front page, FRNT, the front page. Hit enter. This is going to show you all the front page Bloomberg articles right now. It's the same thing you would see on like the Bloomberg News website. But what's really cool is the fact that all your Bloomberg accounts gives you access to premium news providers. So what I mean by premium is that you usually have to pay a subscription fee to get access to those news sources, but it'll be free for you to view those articles on the terminal just because you're a Bloomberg Terminal, you have a Bloomberg Terminal account, right? So all of our Bloomberg Terminal users have access to the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the LA Times for free. I know you guys have like a student discount with Wall Street Journal and stuff, but also know you can get all of the articles on the Bloomberg Terminal for free. So what's great about this function is not only does it show me the front page articles coming from Bloomberg News, but I click on Wall Street Journal here at the top. It's going to show me the front page articles on Wall Street Journal and the front page articles of New York Times, right? And I can kind of click into each to go ahead and read the entire article, right? And again, it's totally free of charge. Other things that we have on this function, on the right-hand side, we have trending tweets. So like I said, all the tweets that we source on Bloomberg comes from reliable, Twitter accounts and Twitter handles. So you'll find any major trending tweets show up here on the right-hand side. And yeah, this is just a really great function to just kind of skim through and get get access from a bunch of different news sources all on a single page. This other function that I like to keep up with current events is called Daybreak, D-A-Y-B. Daybreak is really, really great because something that I take a look at first thing in the morning when I'm drinking coffee. It's like basically a daily newsletter that comes out. Oh, I just got an email from Michael Bloomberg. It's basically something that you would scroll through first thing in the morning. It's going to show you the need to know for the day, right? So it looks at the markets, it looks internationally, it keeps track of politics, it keeps track of what's going on with the virus, right? Everything you need to know is going to show up here. So DAYB, Daybreak, is really, really, really great function. All right, but the last, 3 minutes, I want to just go through charting features. So let me load GameStop, right? I'm going to load GameStop here. We have a function called GP. So GP, if you guys want to write that down or something, that's like the function to run to chart a security. GP, hit enter, right? This is going to show us in a graphical format basically historical prices for GameStop over time. It's going to graph it in a line chart. You're also going to see the volume of the security in a bar graph on the bottom. And obviously with GameStop, obviously we see the price of GameStop absolutely skyrocketing during that whole Reddit period here. But what I want to point out is a lot of other cool tools you can use to overlay charts on Bloomberg, right? So at the top right, if I click edit chart, and then there's an option here called browse data, studies, events, etc. Click on that, right? You're going to see a lot of different results come up. If you click on securities, you can actually go ahead and search for another security to add on to your chart. So if you want to compare GameStop with like AMC, for example, you can add that in there. If I go back and click this browse data studies, I want to point out the studies section right here. Under studies, this is where you can add in technical analysis indicators. You guys know technical analysis is looking at basically patterns in a price chart. So whether it's head and shoulders or Bollinger Bands or simple moving averages, we actually have a lot of technical analysis studies that you could overlay on top of your chart. So I can add some Bollinger Bands in here, add that, hit update, right? And it's going to add Bollinger Bands for me. Going back to the browse data studies events, I really like the events part too, because you can actually add little flags on your chart for different things, right? Let's say the company, paid dividends, right? You can go ahead and add a flag for that on the chart. Let's say that there has been a change in the U.S. president. You can add that flag onto your chart, right? Hit update. It's going to show you you can see, this red is when President Trump was in office right here, right? So you can kind of see how you can add different things. Another thing I'll add is that at the top, you can, under the add data yellow box, where you can add in like news, for example, and research flags as well. So that's the charting feature. I know we're out of time, so I'm going to just kind of finish it off there. But with that being said, did anyone have any questions on anything we went over? I know it was a lot.
I have one out of curiosity. Like, I know you're talking about with like the Twitter like sentiment screen, how it's like from reliable accounts. So just out of curiosity, like, do you guys know if you're gonna add any products for that would like include like meme accounts and stuff like that, since it's like obviously had like more of an impact in like the really near term?
Yeah, totally. That's a really good question. So we actually have a function called TWTR. And let me see if I can share my screen really fast. But so we do have a function on Bloomberg called TWTR for Twitter, and you can actually go ahead and submit certain Twitter handles that you want our Bloomberg team to review to go ahead and add onto our system, basically. So our clients can go ahead and suggest Twitter handles, and if our Bloomberg team thinks that it's worth to add, we'll add that in as like one of our sources. So it's not totally out of the picture, but we just try and like kind of screen out any sort of junk tweets that will come in.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, can I ask you a quick question? I was just wondering, how can we get is there any data or function available for anything on like the buy side, so like hedge funds? And yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah, definitely. So are you talking about like analyzing the performance of different hedge funds and things like that?
Yeah, I know some some of the bigger funds, they kind of like have to release certain information. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So on Bloomberg, getting access to the performance of hedge funds is actually proprietary. So you actually have to go ahead and request for access to view like hedge funds on the terminal. The reason being is that hedge funds, they want to keep things as private as possible. So you have to be an accredited investor pretty much to be able to view that kind of information on the terminal. I don't even have access to the hedge funds. Like, it's blocked for me. So they're like very, very specific on who can view it. Maya, Jordan, I don't know if you had anything else to add in that space.
No, I know that it's a lot of proprietary data. I recommend visiting BPS Go, which is just sort of the overall resources page, which at the very least will kind of give you access to different market players, different sectors, and then you can see maybe what you're able to kind of gain access to through that. That would be my best bet for going at it from this perspective.
Yeah, but aside from hedge funds, you'll have access to, any other sort of fund that's not a hedge fund. You have access to private equity funds. You'll be able to see like any, like a Vanguard fund. You can track their performance on the terminal, like Cathie Wood's ARC ETFs. You'll be able to see on Bloomberg Terminal. It's just specifically hedge funds is restricted for most terminal clients, unfortunately.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll just add, thank you, Bloomberg team, for once again another great session. So thank you to everyone, Freya, Maya, Jordan, great job. For everybody else, again, tell them thank you as well. But that will end our session for today. Please feel free to reach out to the Bloomberg team if you're interested in learning more about those recruiting opportunities. Please take advantage of that. And otherwise, we are done for today, and we'll see everybody on Wednesday during our next session. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Capitalism is greed.